Yeah, welcome back to another mini set card review. Today we've got a lot of cards, including, I think, some promising ones. And as you can see here behind me, a brand new legendary for Demon Hunter that I think is actually kind of promising. This is Chronocar, a 5-mana 3/5 dragon with Battle Cry. Give your hero +3 attack this turn, next turn, and the turn after. So for 3 straight turns here, you're getting that +3 attack. That's +9 in total, which is actually a lot of potential damage output. You know, it's delayed, but in total, it's still a lot. So are you excited to play this on turn 5? No, not necessarily, right? Maybe it's not a total disaster. You get a body, a little bit of reactivity, you know, you can hit a 3/3 or something. Maybe you just go face if the opponent's playing from behind a little bit. Not super exciting, but I think the kind of setup for later does create some promise. Sometimes in an aggressive deck, that could just be, again, you know, slamming face. Maybe you equip a weapon the next turn and just hit even harder with that 3 extra. And it's just like all about reach here and like finding a path to win over the next 3 turns. But there are also things that you can like enable, right? Things where it's like, hey, I want some kind of attack or damage scaling on a future turn without having to potentially like spend the mana or whatever. So, you know, play a Chronocar and then like juice your defiled spear so that you have extra attack. Right now you have 5 attack on this. You can hit face for 5 and clear a 5/5, right? So it's like, you know, instead of having to gain that 3 attack the same turn, you play the defiled spear, you're kind of setting up. There's cards like, you know, Illidari Inquisitor, of course, having a way to set up an attack ahead of time. Like normally that's just kind of equipping a weapon. It's hero powering only for 1 for Demon Hunter. It's not crazy overhead to get an attack going, but you know, in theory, this could line up for that. Now, not on curve, right? Because that'd be like turn 5, 6, and 7. But if you played this on turn 6 or something, maybe you trail into an Inquisitor on 8. Again, weapons can also do that, but I'm just saying there are ways that having that extra attack creates enablers for Demon Hunter, and certainly we could see even more of those in the future. So I don't think this is like insane or anything. You know, it's just, it's fine. I think it's playable though. Basically, you know, it's damage, it's pressure, it has some interactions for the class. It's not a total disaster. So I think this is a promising card, and if we get any real like things that scale off of attack, a 6-cost card that really cares about your attack, a 7-cost card that cares about attack somehow, Chronocar is exactly that sort of enabler, and maybe he's fine as a bit of a finisher anyway, where, you know, it's just like 9 damage is a lot for a single card. All right, so moving on here, we've got our first Demon Hunter and Death Knight cards. Now, we're not going to see the rest of the Death Knight cards until tomorrow, but this is the Remnant of Rage, a 7-mana 6/5 undead demon. It costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn and has this battle cry, draw 2 cards. I actually think this is kind of nuts. I think this is kind of nuts. The battle cry draw 2 is really nice. Now, you're not going to play this for 7. You're not excited, but man, even playing this for like 3 or 4 mana, not a bad card, man. That's actually still pretty insane. Like a 3-mana 6/5 that draws 2 cards. So the question is then like, okay, I need to destroy 4 or more minions in a given turn, which you might think, well, that's not happening every turn, but it's happening enough, especially with like control cards in Death Knight, right? Like run a corpse explosion, wipe a board. 7 minions is not unreasonable sometimes, 5, 6, whatever, right? You get to play like a 2-mana 6/5 that draws you 2 cards. Like what the heck? That is an insane post removal sort of card. And then on the Demon Hunter side of things, don't sleep on the fact that we still have like the little pirates that you can summon like crazy from patches, and the location, Dangerous Cliffside, right? Like you can create little chains with Dangerous Cliffside where you trade these in, and you know, you're getting like 4 of these in a turn, you're killing off 2 or 3 things to the opponent, you're playing a 1-mana 6/5 that draws 2 cards. Even in an aggro deck, that's insane. So here's what I'm saying. This card is actually busted, dude. I think this is kind of nuts. I think both of these classes currently have ways to utilize this very effectively. I can maybe see this falling off a little bit in Demon Hunter after rotation when that sort of Cliffside stuff goes away. But like Death Knight in particular, any control Death Knight is going to have turns where you play a board clear and this comes down. And even like Death Knights too often have their own little stuff on board. You know, they're throwing away little tokens and bodies sometimes into their own removal. So you might even play this for 0 in some instances. This card just seems totally pushed to me. This is crazy strong. All right, so our next card here for Demon Hunter Death Knight is Bygone Echoes, a 5-mana shadow spell. Summon a random 4-cost minion, spend 4 corpses to summon another, and to outcast, you get 1 more, another one. So 3 total 4-cost minions in play. They are random, which is pretty mixed bag usually. You know, it's like you get some 3/3s in the mix, you know, stuff like bad battle cries. You get some 4/4s, occasionally a nice body, but it is still a nice little pile of stuff. I guess the question is, like, how consistently are you hitting the outcast and the corpses? Because that is certainly the only thing that makes this card good. I worry sometimes it's not actually hitting that consistently. Even 4 corpses occasionally can be somewhat difficult to achieve by turn 5. Like, of course, if your deck is built for that, it's not going to be too hard, but it's not the best and biggest payoff either in that instance. Like, it's already kind of soft, I think, for 5 mana, and then having like demands built into it, particularly the outcast demand, that's not going to be easy to achieve very often. So I think this card's ultimately going to end up a little too clunky. The difference from its base value, like its floor, is really bad. Its ceiling is just okay. That's not really a good combination. I think you'd either need a higher floor or a higher ceiling to really make this one feel worth it to me. All right, so moving on to our next combination here. This is Druid and Demon Hunter, which this art is really sick, by the way. Seeing Ashara and Broxigar teaming up is so cool. It does annoy me that they're on the wrong sides. Broxigar, the Demon Hunter legendary, on the Druid side of the card. I mean, he is also kind of Druidy too, for the record. I mean, he's really, I guess, a warrior, but he's got the Axe of Scenarios and he looks kind of Druidy, for the record. But anyway, that said, like, maybe the fact that they're switching sides, and, you know, maybe that's part of the flavor too. Maybe that's even intentional. Who knows? So who cares? Anyway, this is a 2-mana spell. It deals 1 damage. It gives your hero +1 attack this turn, which is very fitting for both Druid and Demon Hunter with the hero powers. And draws 1 card and gains 1 armor. So this is like not the ultimate infestation. Similar sort of vibe where it's just doing a lot of things with a similar number. This is a minor infestation, perhaps. But I actually think this card's okay. I think it's doing just enough that you're kind of okay with it. You know, in essence, 2 damage that's drawing you a card and giving you an armor. Is it enough, though, I guess, to like be worth the slot? That's the question, right? Like, you're kind of just cycling this into something new with that card draw. Without the card draw, I don't think you'd consider this at all. But it's like, is this a good enough little filler? You know, sometimes you clear up a 2 health thing with a 1 damage ping and a hit with your face, and you've gained a little life, so it's not that bad. Sometimes maybe it just goes face for 2 and you've netted kind of a 3 health difference. It's okay, right? I think that's fine. I will say, like, post rotation, when we're looking at a lot smaller card pools, this is the kind of card I could see maybe finding its way into a deck just because you don't have a lot of tools. Maybe you need some cheap spells or whatever, and this is just the kind of card that you run. It's one that like could fall off pretty hard, might not see play right now either until rotation, but it could like fill the bottom of a deck somewhere down the road. All right, so next up here we have the Enduring Roach for Druid and Demon Hunter. This is a 3-mana 3/4 beast that reads, after you use your hero power, refresh 2 mana crystals. So potentially a way here to cheat some mana. Particularly cool in Demon Hunter with a 1-cost hero power, so you like actually gain mana in total there, unlike other classes where you kind of spend 2 to get 2 refreshed. It basically kind of just gives you a free hero power if you think about it in that way. The real problem for this card, though, for me, is just that you have to spend 3 mana in order to do that. And like, yes, of course, you're getting a 3/4 body down, and there is some marginal, you know, longer term upside if this lives, because you get to do it multiple times. Things don't usually live for multiple turns in Hearthstone pretty much ever these days, so that's not a super likely development. So is it worth it to kind of spend 3? And also, when is that happening? Like, you're not playing this down on turn 3, right? You're playing this on like turn 5, and it's like a 3/4 on turn 5, just a hero power and spend another 2-mana card. Like, none of that really seems worth it to me. So although there are some like imbue Druid things that, you know, are using their hero power a lot, it's a neat interaction with Demon Hunter. Like, yeah, I get it, but I just don't think the power level is really there. Moving on here to our solo Druid card. This is Splintered Reality, a new 4-mana spell. Nature, summon 2 2/2 treants. They gain +1/+1 for each friendly treant that died this game, which we don't have a ton of treant stuff these days. Like, you know, we don't have Treant decks floating around, but there's still a few things if you look, right? Like Witchwood Apple can make you a lot. We still got Overgrown Beanstalk is kind of like a nice payoff card. Grove Shaper is sort of Treant adjacent. She's more about the like nature spells, I guess, really. Trees is a good way to kill off some Treants. So like there are a few things. I don't think it's enough to make a deck right now. And of course, if you don't have a deck, then Splintered Reality is not going to be worth it because this one scales off the number of Treants that you're playing for. So a card, I would say, take a pause on this right now. I don't see this getting played at all in the short term, but I actually think a pretty high power potential card for later. If you spend like your first 3 turns after, you know, let's say a few expansions down the road, we get some more trees or whatever, a Treant deck comes along, you play 3, 4, 5 Treants leading into turn 4, and you get 2 guys that are like 6/6s on turn 4 after you've already been developing a lot of pressure early thanks to some Treant Swarms early. That's a crazy powerful kind of play. Even if these are like 4/4s, it's not terrible. 5/5s is pretty nice, 6/6s, etc. And then there could even be some late game scenarios where, you know, you go on turn 8, 9, 10 even, and this is making you like 10/10s, 12/12s or whatever. That's still a pretty crazy, scary threat. So this is definitely one I would keep an eye on for later. It's clearly one we just don't know if it'll get or not because, you know, they have to print the Treants for this to hit. That means it hits. If they don't, it never hits. It's dead forever. But it has that potential. Like it has the raw characteristics you have to consider that this could someday be a powerful card, which means we have to give it that score. The likelihood is unknown, but the possibility is there. Moving on to our next combination, it's Druid and Paladin with the Twilight Time Reaver here. This guy's big and cool looking. 6 mana, 5/5 dragon. Choose one, set the attack of all other minions to 1 or health to 1. So you can choose to go for a big time debuff where a board can't hurt you very much, or go for that health debuff to maybe, you know, set up a swipe or a consecration to clear the enemy board. But as we know, like this is a pretty expensive equality. Equality being attached to a 5/5, it doesn't really feel, you'd rather just have an equality style effect, right? Or a debuff style effect. We've got some really cheap versions of those as well. I think the overhead on this one, the 6 mana tax you have to pay to get this effect for only a 5/5 body, I think it's just going to mean it comes down a little too late for it to be relevant. I don't hate the idea of giving Druid access to some ways to clear boards, but I really don't think this is going to prove to be the right way for Druid to do that. It would just probably be too slow, even with lots of ramp stuff, for it to really be impactful. Moving on to the Acceleration Aura. This is a 2 mana holy spell. The start of your turn, gain a temporary mana crystal, and it lasts for 3 turns. So basically, you kind of get like ramp, but only for 3 turns, like a wild growth, but only for the next 3 turns. So that's turns like 3, 4, and 5. So like you'd go into turn 3 with 4 mana, you'd go into turn 4 with 5, you go into turn 5 with 6, or, you know, later on. Do keep in mind though, this isn't aura, so Paladin does have some aura synergies here. You could, like, you know, stack these up, you could multiply them, make them last longer, you know, lots of things here, cheat them out, etc. with auras that do become pretty interesting. I will also say, like, you know, ramp is already kind of limited. If you think about wild growths, right? Like in Druid in particular, sometimes the wild growths are already only impactful for basically like maybe 3 to 5 turns because you get to your mana cap anyway, right? And then the wild growths don't do anything anymore, right? So depending on how much ramp you stack up, you know, obviously if you don't play anything but a wild growth, it's relevant for like 6 turns or whatever, but 6 or 7, I don't know, you get the idea. But, you know, sometimes if you accelerate to 10 really fast, that wild growth kind of turns itself off. It's more about cheating out that bigger stuff in that middle stage of the game just to help you get ahead a little bit more. I would say Acceleration Aura to me sort of fills that same gap, right? Like you especially if you play this on like turn 4 or 5, maybe cheating out a big 8-drop, 9-drop, a late game bomb kind of card is all you really need to make it worth it, right? It's just kind of 1 or 2 key turns in some cases, much like we see with cards like Trail Mix or whatever. It's sometimes about hitting those key windows as opposed to like the total net mana gain throughout the course of the game. Now, this isn't as good as something like Trail Mix at accelerating into those really big key hits, but it's in a similar sort of space as a wild growth that gets you halfway there, and Paladin doesn't otherwise have access to that. So between the aura hookup and the kind of ramp side of it, I think this actually kind of works in Paladin. I think it makes sense. Will Druid need it as well? Maybe, I don't know. It just depends on ramp packages right now. I don't know if I see Druid running this, but post rotation in particular coming soon. I think Druid could take a look at this as a ramp fill-in for sure. So I actually think this card's pretty solid. Moving on to the Paladin Hunter combination here. This is the Brutish Endmaw, a 3-mana 3/3 beast with Discover, a 1-cost minion with a Dark Gift. So not very exciting up front here for the 3-mana 3/3. But I do love Dark Gifts, and 1-drops with Dark Gifts have some really interesting interactions in Hunter in particular, with like Neri being able to potentially like double those stats. Imagine giving a 1-drop 4/5 in stats and then playing it with Neri and doubling those stats even further, right? You could get like easily a 1-mana 10/12 down or something with all of that effect, which is pretty cool, I guess. Is that worth it though, to like play a mediocre 3-drop in the meantime? I don't know. I look a little bit at like Quest Hunter maybe with this. It's 3 attack there for Quest Hunter is kind of interesting. 1-cost stuff for Paladin. There's like some aggro Paladins that do like having all these little cheap bodies, but again, the 3/3 is not very exciting in that instance. So I don't know. Unlike Creature of Madness, where you kind of have that perfect curve of 2 into 3, this one almost goes backwards, and it feels like you're sacrificing even more by playing this up front. I think if this said like Discover a 1-cost beast, that would maybe give it a different angle in Hunter that could be more interesting, or even like Mech or something in Paladin. Not that would fit the flavor, but as it stands, I think this card's just a little bit backwards. You're kind of sacrificing too much up front for what I think is ultimately still a good result, but maybe just one that comes down a little too late. Next up here is the Synchronized Spark. This is a 4-cost spell. Again, Hunter and Paladin. I'm going to be real with you, I haven't even read this yet. I forgot to look at this card ahead of time and think about it. So we're going to discover this one together and talk it out live. Usually I do a little, quick 30-second think about cards. I just missed this one. I've never seen this in my life. Anyway, this reads: deal 3 damage to an enemy, so that hits both face and minions. If it dies, give a random friendly minion +3/+3, and that is on board, it seems, not in hand. So this card's like really good if you're ahead, or if you're able to play something cheap perhaps alongside it, and also able to kill something with 3 or less health, which playing alongside it, that sounds kind of challenging to do on turn 5, right? Like play a 1-drop and this. Will there even be anything with 3 health around? Sometimes yes, not always though. That could be awkward. You'd have to have really clean curve hits for that. Otherwise, you kind of have to be ahead on board going into turn 4 with something left over from turn 3. And then again, sometimes the targets won't always be there. And if this only goes face, you're incredibly sad that you didn't get a buff out of it. Obviously, 4 mana for 3 damage feels pretty weak. I think the conditionality on this is going to be a little bit too tough. I think it's going to have a lot of instances where it just fails on board, or even that +3/+3 buff. If it's hitting something that can't like interact or attack yet, even that could feel pretty bad. So it's like you have to be ahead. And as a deck that's playing that reliably ahead, maybe off Divine Shields, maybe off Sticky Death Rattles or whatever, doesn't want a card like this in the mix. I don't really think so, right? So at the end of the day, I think this just feels a little clunky to me. I don't really see how this is worth it. Moving on to our solo Hunter card. This is the Trienium Rex, a 5-mana 5/5 beast with Kindred and Death Rattle. Get a random Death Rattle minion. It costs 2 less. I just don't think this is going to be worth it, right? Random minions, even when you give that Death Rattle specificity, they're still really random, awkward costs sometimes, weird fits, still have like synergy plays you can't line up, right? It's just going to be hard to get a result that's really compelling, even with that discount. This guy also just kind of sucks to play up front, like, just slamming a 5-mana 5/5 these days doesn't compete. Kindred's probably not super hard to activate in Hunter or anything. There are certainly a lot of beasts historically in Hunter, but again, just another condition on a payoff that's not that incredible to me. Also, Kindred cards have just, like, for the most part, totally failed. So that's never a good sign. I think that means this guy gets left out really quick. Even like Death Rattle synergy decks, I don't know if they'd be worth it necessarily. There's bigger and better Death Rattles historically than this. So yeah, just a bit of a clunker. Moving on to the Warlock and Hunter combination. This is Chrono Claws, a 4-mana 4/3. So big damage output on this weapon. That is 12 total damage. It reads: after your hero attacks, discard your highest cost card, which remember, we did already see the quest for Hunter and Warlock yesterday, where you're trying to fill your hand and then empty your hand. Of course, discarding 3 things over the 3 attacks here could be a way to help discard your hand. Pretty slow payoff of one, like that's, you play this on turn 4, you're talking about like turn 6, you'd finally discard 3 things. Even then, you don't even necessarily guarantee that you'd be discarding your hand. I don't really know if that's a great, it's theoretically support for the quest. Is it great support for the quest though? Yeah, I'm not sold that it's really all that compelling. More interesting here might be a like traditional discard Warlock package, like in Wild, for instance. This probably looks nuts in Wild. Like you just get 12 damage and you get to discard a bunch of stuff that already synergizes, pays off, summons, does damage, or whatever. Seems like an insane discard Warlock wild card. And that means in Standard, if we do ever get another discard Warlock package, something to keep an eye on for sure. Like if you're happy to discard big things, this is an incredible card. 12 damage for 4 feels really, really nice in that instance. So I wouldn't write it off. Hunter, otherwise, I think probably a little clunky. Like I could imagine maybe some like face hunters that are just like playing from an empty hand anyway. And we've seen a few of those like empty hand hunter cards recently as well, but I don't really think this is even worth the risk there. There's other ways to get big damage in Hunter, and this one could just lead to too many clunky scenarios where you've just got to discard something you don't want to, or timing's weird or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, this is an awkward card there. So basically, this is one that I'm still going to give a good score because, again, the potential for discard Warlock to exist could absolutely break this card open, and it would be totally nuts, and we have to recognize that potential. Right now, this is like a 2-star card. Someday, this could be absolutely broken and could be nuts and wild already too. Moving on to our solo Warlock card, the Acolyte of Infinity, a 3-mana 5/5 dragon with battle cry set the cost of a random card in your hand to infinity, and then Death Rattle, change it back. So a little bit of a downside risk here on this card, but you get a 5/5 for 3, which is, good, above rate, very aggressive sort of thing. Hopefully in most games that affinity cost goes away, because this probably does just get cleaned up and die. If it doesn't get cleaned up and died, maybe you're winning anyway. It's just you've been hitting them with 5/5, or maybe it gets transformed or silenced and you're sad, but maybe sacrificing 1 card in hand is still not a total disaster. Now I'm going to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which always comes up every single time. Agamagon does not work with this. I have had to explain this to so many people so many times in videos. Agamagon has a cap of only up to, wait, what the heck? Where did he go? I just had him open. Agamagon has a cap of up to only 10 damage. You cannot deal infinite damage to the opponent with a 2-card combo here with Agamagon, much like it doesn't work with Ceaseless Expanse. It's up to 10. So I know what you're thinking. It doesn't work. That would obviously be crazy broken. Thank God it doesn't. But yeah, I think, so is this worth it, right? I don't know, man. There's like aggressive Warlock decks where I could see this maybe making the cut a little bit just because the 5/5 is big enough. That said, we've had similar cards that are just big bodies with downsides. I'm thinking about like, the Malefic Rook or whatever, right? Like that was a 5/6, I think even. Is this downside, better or worse than that? Probably a little better because it probably is a downside that just goes away. But also, do you need like bonus synergies? Do you need cards that are driving towards a real game plan other than just bodies and stats? We don't see bodies and stats working quite as effectively as we used to. Generally, there's some other thing going on, some other pop off, some other synergy. That's where I think this could maybe get left behind. So it's like fine, but probably not compelling enough. Moving on to External Toil. This is a Warrior Warlock, the War combo. 1 mana shadow spell, deal 1 damage to a minion. If it survives, draw a card. If it dies, summon a random 1-cost minion. So kind of some like Mortal Coil and Slam combinations happening here, and I guess other, maybe not, but there's that other Warlock card that summons stuff if it died. I don't remember, but you get the idea. I'm not really in love with this card though. I think like 1 mana cycling out is not really that interesting anymore, and only dealing 1 damage to a minion, an ineffectual 1 damage typically at that. Like, yes, it could be an execute sort of activator. We're actually going to see another warrior card that does care about things having taken damage. So, it's not like a disaster, but it's just sort of slam light. And it's like, yeah, it's a little better than slam in that instance, but I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of slam these days. And I also just don't think that's the most compelling card. Killing something off also, like, pings aren't terrible. Having a ping is nice. Getting a 1 cost out of it is a fine bonus. There will be moments that feels totally fine. I think both sides of this will have moments where they feel totally fine. The reality though for me is that like feeling totally fine out of a vacuum, out of thin air is not enough. You have to actually get the card played in a deck, right? And how many decks are going to make an excuse to do this? Like, is an Enraged Warrior package enough where you're damaging your own stuff? Is using this as an enabler for removal with like Execute or a card we're going to see shortly, is that enough of an excuse to run it? Maybe. I don't think so though. I think there's just like bigger, better ways to do those things. AoEs, other cards that are more impactful, that have a bit more independence perhaps than external toil. So I think this one kind of just gets left out in many instances. Moving on to the End Time Survivor. This is a 5-mana 5/6. This really doesn't look much like a Warlock card at all to me. It just has full-on warrior vibes. I guess she has purple hair. Purple hair's on fire. That's Warlock, I guess. End Time Survivor, though, is Taunt and Battle Cry. If your hero took damage this turn, gain +3/+3, which for Warlock, you know, historically has lots of ways to do that. You got life tap, you got your own self-damaging kinds of effects across the board. So you get a big old 8/9 taunt body when that happens. For Warrior, maybe not as many reliable ways, but the main way would be attacking into a minion with a weapon. So you equip a weapon on turn 4. We got that like stadium card right now, the dragon that gives you random weapons. You hit into something, you take damage. End Time Survivor comes down and is an 8/9 taunt. I think that's solid. I don't think it's great though. We're just in an era where even a vanilla 8/9 taunt would be good, but it wouldn't be nuts, right? And this is not that. This is a, you know, it has this conditionality. Sometimes this will whiff. Sometimes you won't hit the weapon in Warrior. Warlock, on the other hand, probably has more ways to reliably do this, but I don't know if they're as easily set up. You know, like Life Tap, for instance. That's a 7-cost play. Not very excited to Life Tap into this on turn 7, even if you got some other really cheap ways to do that, or a deck that was all in on that self-damage. This doesn't really stand out to me as a big, crazy self-damage payoff card. Usually those were happening a lot faster, a lot more aggressive. It's, again, probably fine in that world, but I don't know. I think the condition reward balance here feels just a little bit off again. I think if this were a cheaper card with its stats scaled down to match, it would look a lot more interesting to me. You know, if this were a 3-mana 3/4 that gained like +2/+2 or whatever, that's some numbers that I think are more intriguing. When you push this up to 5, it starts feeling like maybe it's coming down a little bit too late, or it's just too much of a commitment for it. So yeah, I don't think the End Time Survivor gets there. All right, moving on to Warrior's solo card here, the Dimensional Weaponsmith, a 3-mana 2/5 dragon with Battle Cry. Give all minions and weapons in your hand +2 attack, which I think this is actually kind of good, man. I think pretty solid hand buff. Of course, you prefer, I think, when hand buffs give you some health too, but upping the aggression on cards like Draco Rex in particular that care specifically about attack value, that would be a crazy hit in a Dragon Warrior. And weapons getting +2 attack in particular is worth a lot of damage in some cases, right? If you got a weapon with 3 durability, you're talking about 6 extra damage total thanks to your Dimensional Weaponsmith. Now, Dragon Warrior currently doesn't really hard run weapons. They have that same stadium card we just talked about that's equipping the weapon off of Battle Cry. So this would not buff weapons currently in Dragon Warrior, but this does not have to be only a Dragon Warrior card, and we could certainly see a deck that's still aggressive, that's running some weapons somewhere down the road where this attack buff becomes really, really valuable. So I actually think this is pretty solid, like a 2/5 body, dragon synergies, some immediate payoffs, and just more raw aggression in a deck that cares about that, right? There's a lot of ways to deal damage and hit face in that deck. You know, you got sometimes Grom stuff, and you got Logosh stuff too. That package can care about damage as well. So I think it is sort of a pretty good fit for Warrior. This is a bit of a sleeper card here. Pretty good. So then moving on to our last 2 cards. These actually got revealed yesterday, but I screwed up the schedule thing I was looking at. I only looked at one half of it and didn't realize these were getting revealed. Anyway, that's my fault. But this is Bitter End, the card I teased earlier. This one's for Mage and Warrior. Crazy combination. 5-mana Frost spell. Freeze a minion and its neighbors, and then destroy any that are damaged. This is kind of like that Execute thing I was talking about with the Toil, where damaging a minion first means you get to remove it instead of just freeze it. Which, you know, we like removing things. We don't hate freezing things. I will say like 5 mana just to freeze 3 things is a pretty expensive freeze compared to a lot of the freezes we've had in the past. You know, Blizzard, for instance, 6 mana to freeze everything and damage everything, clear up small stuff in many cases. This needs like a 2-part hit to be good. You know, you kind of have to set up, and like certainly Mage has ways to ping a variety of ways. Warrior has some ways to ping too. There's like, you know, weapons that are whirlwindy style weapons and stuff in particular. There's ways to do this. I don't want to pretend like it's not possible to damage things where this becomes a solid removal. Maybe. I don't think it's great though. And I think, you know, you're basically asking your deck to kind of mix in more removal. Maybe a controller quest warrior kind of has to rely on something like this post rotation because they just don't have enough tools. But I think this would be pretty quickly forgotten as soon as slightly better removal cards became available. So like, yes, stall is good, removal is good. Both classes historically have taken advantage of those things. I just don't think this is the most effective way to do either of them, and that conditionality is going to really hurt this one. So our final card here is the Time Twisted Seer, a 1 mana 1/3 dragon, has spell damage +2 while damaged. So, you know, we talked about some Enrage Warrior stuff with Toil and some of these like whirlwind effects where you can damage these things. Not crazy hard for Warrior in particular to enable this. I mean, Mage also, of course, has plenty of pings, but some of those might be a little harder to use on your own stuff. You know, hero power ping on this, for instance, that's fine, but you're talking about a 3 mana play now. Still maybe not terrible for spell damage +2, but Warrior, for instance, can like set up a really nice weapon ahead of time, right? Warrior can set up a Axe of the Forefathers and then play 2 Time Twisted Seers and instantly have spell damage +4, which that's not crazy. And Warrior actually does have some decent like damage spells these days. You know, even Concussive Shells deal 2 damage. Well, now that's deal 6 damage. Who cares about the Starship? I just want 1 mana deal 6, right? Suddenly it's like, man, okay, Bash deal 7, right? Like, man, can you set up like an OTK Warrior with some Time Twisted Seer action? Probably not. I mean, health totals get so high these days, I don't really think you'll quite get there, but it's intriguing. Like, you're keeping an eye on it. And Mage might have a harder time with the setup, but probably has better payoffs. So you're also like intrigued with Mage. Like, can Mage set something up? Maybe we don't see it right now, but maybe down the road, Mage gets a crazy cool tool for that. So I don't know, man. I think Time Twisted Seer at spell damage +2 is really threatening and the kind of card you have to keep in mind as a threat. We don't see spell damage OTKs quite as commonly as we used to, but it's still threatening. And I think a meta shift could create an opening for this one, and suddenly it blows people up and we're all like, oh my god, spell damage +2 for only 1 mana is absolutely cracked. How did we not notice this? So yeah, this is a high threat card for sure. All right, so that's how. Let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Chronocar is a 4-star card. Remnant of Rage is a 5-star card. Bygone Echoes is a 2-star card. Press the Advantage is a 3-star card. Enduring Roach is a 2-star card. Splintered Reality is a 4-star card. Acceleration Aura is a 4-star card. Brutish Endmaw is a 2-star card. Synchronized Spark is a 1-star card. Tranium Rex is a 2-star card. Chrono Claws is a 4-star card. Acolyte of Infinity is a 3-star card. Eternal Toil is a 3-star card. In Time Survivor is a 2-star card. Dimensional Weaponsmith is a 4-star card. Bitter End is a 3-star card. Time Twisted Seer is a 4-star card. And yeah, there you go. We got some 4s in the mix today. Yeah, even a 5. This card just looks completely insane to me. Like, am I underestimating the difficulty of killing minions off? I don't know, man. I think people are going to be playing some 2 mana 6/5s that draw 2 cards, some 0 mana 6/5s that draw 2 cards. Like, you know, if this had enemy or friendly minion, you know, that would be different, but it's all minions. This looks nuts to me, man. I don't know. So anyway, share your thoughts on these cards and more down below. Let me know what you all think. Stay tuned for the final card review, I think tomorrow. Only a handful of cards left. And then I don't know when this all comes out, but stay tuned, of course, for some some deck videos when it does. Anyway, thanks again. Good luck out there in the world of Hearthstone. Thanks for watching, and until next time, game on.